Hi, this is Dr. Anita with another diamond moment. The diamonds of our lives are created through time, heat, and pressure. I'm going to repeat that. The diamonds of our lives are created by time, heat, and pressure. I'm going to be moving us forward now into a different area of the development of these diamonds, of the value of our lives, of what we've experienced that brings us to an entirely different level in life. I'm going to do that from this point moving forward for the next, I don't know how long, to get us to a place where we can really utilize where we've been. And that takes in all areas of life: spiritual, physical, social, emotional, and even financial. And I'm going to do that through sharing with you the growth and development of my life. This is how we began, and this is how we're going to continue moving forward. I know that some of the things that I say to you in the episodes going forward may challenge you, may be challenging to the way that you view life or the way that you've lived life. But I will say it again, the diamonds of our lives are produced through time, heat, and pressure. So we're going to go back and evaluate from this perspective, the spiritual side of things. I told you that I believe in the truth of Scripture, the truth of Scripture. And that truth goes back many generations before what we're given in the biblical text of truth. It goes back beyond that. For those of you that will purchase or are looking to purchase my journal, I do share with you my beliefs. I tell you what I believe. And I believe that, again, in the truth of Scripture. I also believe that our knowledge, our history has been skewed in order to benefit some and to control others. I do not necessarily hold to everything that I believed at the start of my spiritual journey, because I have learned and I've grown. I will say this, and I will continue to say it probably forever. It was the experiences of my life, the painful experience I shared with you in the early episodes about losing a son. It was that loss, that traumatic experience that caused me to examine further my beliefs. I didn't have a lot of spiritual beliefs. I knew about a man called Jesus, but I did not know about spiritual things. It was in learning about this person, the person of Jesus Christ, that opened me to the spiritual. And in opening me to the spiritual, it became a long time walk, a journey of time, as I went through the heat of life and the pressures of life in order to develop and to grow to the place that I am now. Not to say that I'm finished, because I'm not. As long as we are in this physical body, in this physical realm, we are still in the process of becoming. And that process of becoming, as I've continued to tell you, has stages. And so we have to grow step by step, moment by moment. We learn, as Scripture tells us, here a little, there a little, line upon line and precept upon precept. And it is this understanding and this level of growth that enables us to take the diamonds from the raw experiences that we've had and to find value in them. And that value should take us farther than we've ever been. If the value that you've gained in your life has limited you, you have not properly evaluated those experiences, because you're still missing out. So I'm going to be moving us forward in terms of the spiritual. because that is the way that I learned. Maybe someone else could take you a different way. That's not the way that I learned. And in that, I have had to grow. I have had to transform. I have had to reevaluate. I have had to do everything that I have shared with you in order to gain that wisdom, that knowledge, and that understanding from my own personal experiences. And that's where I'm going to be talking to you from. I'm also going to say this as a disclaimer and a disclosure. Anytime you hear me and I'm searching for words and I'm looking and searching for ways to lay something out to you, it's because I'm trying to be politically correct. So as we move forward, I'm not going to try to be politically correct. I'm going to tell you what I've learned, what I found, and I'm going to give you the same breadcrumbs that led me to where I am. And that's not always politically correct. I also want to give you this disclosure. Spiritual care, of which I deal with, is not Christian care. So understand that some of the things that I may share may challenge your previous beliefs in what you thought you learned about your faith or your religion. I'm not here to do religion. I'm here to pull out of you an understanding of where you've been and connect it to the spiritual side of things, because as scripture will say, the things that you can't see are more real than what you can see. Understanding that to be the way that you think, the way that you experience life is more real than the actual life that you're experiencing. The way that the thought that came into making a chair was more real than the chair itself, because that thought came first. So we're going to be moving forward unapologetically. I'm just going to have to put it out there and tell you the truth, because it's time for you to know. We spent 2 years of your time and mine going through various challenges to our thoughts to be able to move beyond what so-and-so thought or what so-and-so said, in order to bring you to a place of independence so that you can think for yourself, so that you can think beyond what somebody said that you're allowed to think. I'm going to define once again religion as what man does to reach God, and relationship, that spirituality of our connection to God. And then I want you to really, really get this concept. We have made God too small. God is too small. God fits into what we say God fits into, and not we fit into what God is. God is, if we're looking at a universal creator, the God of all things, we're looking at a being that truly is really outside of our ability to define. I said this a few episodes ago, but look at the sky and understand that God created not only our sky, not only the universe that we look at, but each one of those little lights that we see are more than just stars. Many of those are additional suns that belong to additional galaxies, that belong to additional universes that we can't even imagine. And when we try to make God our size, we limit everything. We limit who we are. We limit the fabric of who God is. We limit ourselves in being able to make sense out of where we are. And so what I'm going to be presenting, for as long as it takes me to present it, and it may be from this point forward, please understand that we have made God, that which created us, source, creator, the universe, we made it too small. And because we made it so small, we are able to be controlled due to what we believe about who God is. if we can understand, and for those who believe in Jesus, he said, I'm leaving you something greater than myself. He said, the things that I do, you're going to do more than this because I am leaving. I'm going back to be reunited into that universal presence that is us all. And so when we understand, we weren't supposed to stop at Jesus. Many people have stopped at Jesus. They attribute everything Jesus is supposed to be doing, everything Jesus is supposed to, we take to. When he told us himself, don't stop with me, keep going. Don't stop with me, keep going. And we stopped. And when we stopped, it enabled us to be controlled. How did I get here? Dr. Anita, how did you get to this place? And why are you thinking this? And why are you telling us this? And I'm going to tell you. I talked to you a little bit about the politics of our lives, the ideas that have begun to surface, and the voices that people are listening to. And they've stopped listening within. They've stopped looking towards their spiritual man. They've stopped listening from within, and they're strictly listening from without. And they're listening to voices, and those voices are saying that we are Christian, but yet they don't show anything about the way that Christ said that we are to live. And as I began to look at that, as I began for here in the United States to question how some of the states, and in particular, the one that I was born in, Texas, doesn't have a problem with putting barbed wire in water and people being killed by that. And when you go back and you look at what scripture tells us, quote unquote, thou shalt not kill, then you wonder, well, how is it okay? And then how is it okay for the church to go along with that? The church being those who profess themselves to be Christian, and they don't have a problem with that. How is it that the church can follow a person who lies and who they know who lies? How can they be okay with that? How can the church go along with people who have determined that you can be convicted of a crime, and yet they decided it doesn't matter, they're still going to follow you? So as I began to look at this, I began to be able to distance myself from this entire thought process. Why is it that it's okay when I already know that it's not okay? Why would you tell me to vote for this person or believe in this thing when you already know that it's not okay? Who is controlling what in this Christian, quote unquote, environment? Because I don't see the Christians controlling it. So I'm saying that to say, once again, that is how I began to look at, be critical of, to challenge these concepts. That caused me to go back in my own understanding and say, well, where did your belief come from? Where is it that you began to believe these things, and why are you being led in this direction? I'm probably going to move forward in these discussions so that I can get more to you in a longer content. So most likely the episodes that I'm going to be doing are going to be longer than our normal 15 minutes or so, 14 minutes or so. But it's because I want to get to you some information more quickly so that you can begin to evaluate your own life. Remember, the only thing that I can do is offer to you information. You would have to be the ones to determine how you use that information, whether or not you're able to even identify with what I'm saying. And if you're not, that's fine. I understand that some people are not at a place in their life where they are ready to evaluate some of the things that we're going to be looking at. I get that. But I do want to make you aware that we're going to be going in a different direction. And that direction came about by what I see going on in real time of what people are telling us that they are, when we automatically know they may not be what we equate ourselves to be. And if not, where did the shift occur and what is going on here? One of the things that I've noticed is that the Florida in particular has determined that they're going to change history, that they're going to decide how history is written, how history is presented, and how the people, the children, the youth of Florida will be exposed to what everyone knows is true. That going back to how the history of the people who are termed as African Americans are depicted in this society at this time. February is set aside in the United States as Black History Month. And in that regard, we have people that are right now in real time seeking to change that history. So as I begin to look back and to say, well, how do they feel as though they are entitled to be able to change an entire cultural history into what they want it to be? And as I examined that, and as I looked at it, and as I went back, and I've been teaching on this for a while outside of this environment, but there was a doctrine of discovery that was given to the world by the Catholic Church, which said that, and I'm paraphrasing, that if you don't believe in the Christ, or if you're not a Christian in the way that the Catholic Church said you're supposed to be a Christian, then they had the right to come in and to forever enslave you and to appropriate anything that you have for themselves. So that's why we see such wealth in some countries and poverty in others. A great example of that is what happened in Africa, in which the African people were robbed and stripped of the diamonds, the gold, everything, the minerals that they had, in order for another people who came in and said, because you don't think like we think, you can forever be enslaved and whatever you have can be appropriated and given to us. We know that the Queen died not that long ago, okay? And in her death, there were numerous crowns. They buried her with a crown and a scepter and all of the glorious things that go along with being a queen. And when we understand that the diamonds and the jewels that were in that crown were not necessarily found in England, that many of those gemstones and the things that the grandeur that was lived with within that royal family came from other places, came from Africa. And yet the African people are depicted as much less intelligent than everyone else, much less valuable than everyone else. And the countries of this world are still seeking to further appropriate the wealth of Africa for their own countries. And that is going on right now. As we look at history being changed before our very eyes, when the Trump administration came in, they said there's a truth and then there's an alternate truth. There's the truth, and then there's an alternate truth, another way of looking at this. And so when we're looking at it from an alternate perspective, you can make anything look right. You can make wrong right, and you can make a lie the truth because you are presenting it from another perspective. What we have to do as individuals is to push back against what you're trying to tell me is true, because I know that it's not true. I know that what you're doing is not for my benefit, and I do understand that what you're saying is your truth, but it is not my truth. We know that, and I'm saying this because this is what's happening, and maybe something that you can relate to in a real-time kind of a basis, that Mr. Trump has said that people from certain countries, if you're African, if you're from Central America, the Spanish-speaking countries, or you're Oriental, that you're poisoning the blood of this country, of America. Why would he say that? Because the idea is gained and brought about from the doctrine of discovery, that this was supposed to be a country that was set aside to be utilized by the people who look like a certain group, who look like the colonizers. And from their perspective, anything that does not look like the colonizers is poisoning. If you were with me on a daily basis, and you'd know that we talk about this all the time, but looking at regular television commercials, a regular television commercial is going to expose you to a demographic that advertiser is seeking to reach. That advertiser is bringing you images of who they want to reach. And the more that those images change, the more that some groups of our society become troubled. So when you see a number of biracial people, children, you see interracial couples, you see the byproduct of those interracial couples as biracial children. Then when you go back to statements like these people are poisoning, these groups of people are poisoning the blood of our country, you can better understand what's being said to you. So why would you bring that up, Dr. Anita? Because you've got to understand the context in which you have been controlled. The context in which you have been controlled. And in that controlling context, it seeks to mold things to look a way that these or a particular group of people want it to look. And as we see it roll out in a societal perspective, or from a societal perspective that is happening right now in real time, we can definitely understand what took place hundreds of years ago that now are reflective of the lives that we're living. I'm going to give you an example, and this also I've been dealing with on a daily basis with those that I teach on a daily basis, understanding that where we are is a place that was designed for us to be. I look at the truth of Scripture. The truth of Scripture. But there's also an aspect of the very Bible that we have come to rely on that is not reflective of truth. It is reflective of the control of those who wanted to control us to have. Okay? With that being said, understand that decisions were made at the Council of Nicaea to present portions of what they had as truth and to leave out other portions of what they had as truth or what they knew to be true. Even in terms of our New Testament, and what has been included in our New Testament was designed to be placed there so that a control could be placed on people to be able to get from them what they needed to have happen. When we go back and we look at the fact that in 1611, I believe it was, that the King James Bible came into being, and understanding that that doctrine of discovery happened before that in the 1500s, we can understand how this particular document that many, many people count on as the source of their understanding and their belief was, for lack of a better term, tailored in order to produce a particular outcome. Once again, I'm going to go back and say this many, many times. I believe in the truth of Scripture. I believe in the truth of Scripture, but I also understand that some of the Scripture that we read has been manipulated in order to get something across, in the same way that Florida is seeking to manipulate in order to present only a history that they want to present. It's the same principle. I'm going to say this as well. For those who are and were privy to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, you'll remember that Warren Commission was set to be presented to the people 100 years later, 100 years after the assassination took place. That is when they determined that they would release this information. Why would you wait 100 years in order to release information that was so pertinent to the people of that time? And my answer to you would be, because in 100 years, everybody who was actually involved, and probably their children who would have the greatest blowback over what took place, that those people would be dead. When we go back and we look at the president who came into power because of the death of John Fitzgerald Kennedy, then we know that he's dead. His wife is dead. His daughters, who were young people at the time, are now in their early and late 70s. And we still have about 40 more years before the commission's report would come out. If they're in their 70s, their children are probably in their 50s. In another 40 years, the first generation after the assassination would be dead, and the second generation might also. So therefore, anybody who could actually be connected to what took place has now been so far removed in history until we're able to relate to it about like we can relate to what took place in the gold rush. It was so long ago until you really can't even get a good grip on what was happening. In that same way, what took place during the time of the Nicene Council actually happened. Those, what the stories that they included in the canon of Scripture that we call the Bible actually took place over 300 years before that. If we can look at this and just equate it back to that example of what took place with the president, then we can understand that if everybody that was involved in firsthand knowledge in 100 years would be dead, how many more generations have passed if we now present something that took place over 300 years ago? We have multiple 40-year generations of people that are now dead. And so now I have the opportunity to tell you whatever it is that I choose to tell you, and you have no choice but to believe it. I want you to go in your time and look at just what you can find from an encyclopedia about Scripture, who wrote it, when it was included, about the Council of Nicaea, about who was there. And as we move forward, we're going to deal with those things a little more, because what you need to understand is that the book, while it contains truth, absolutely, it does contain truth. It has also been manipulated so that those who read it can be controlled. The questions that everybody asks about why would a good God do this type of stuff, the type of things that we see to people, why would a good God allow that to happen? All of these are part of what we're going to address in the weeks to come. Part of this, we're going to address and look at the diamonds in our lives. Why did we experience the things that we did? Why is it that so many people have been hurt at the hands of those that they went to for spiritual care, for Christian care? Why were they injured? I've had these same injuries occur to me in my life as to people who were in leadership that probably didn't need to be in anything. Some, and I say this often, some people were sent and some people just went. They just went because it carried a check. And when you come across those people who just went, you're able to understand and you're able to see the contrast in those who were sent. And then I want to give you this as well. Scripture tells us that you will know the truth. And it is that the truth that will set you free, but just not any truth. The truth that you know, that you understand. When you're able to connect the dots, when you're able to follow the breadcrumbs of life, you'll be able to understand better where you've been, who God is, truly, who you are. The fact that what you have been taught was positioned there to control you. It was given from a particular viewpoint in order to make you think something so that someone could continue living the life that they wanted to live, that they could continue to enslave you, that they could continue to appropriate what was yours to them. And as we move forward, we're moving, as Jesus said, don't stop with me. The New Testament gives us a scripture. It says that by this time you should be teaching, but you're still going back over the rudimentary, the beginning things that you've learned. Why? Because you haven't gotten it. You haven't been able to connect the breadcrumbs. You haven't been able to see what Jesus was saying. Don't stop with me. I'm going to send you a spirit, the spirit that is truly connected to that which is greater, not a being that is so small he's a couple of inches bigger than an angel who's a couple of inches bigger than us. No, this is the true creator of the heavens and the earth. I'm not saying the one who's ruling over. I'm talking about the one who created it all. Source, the creator, the universe, that is who we're referring to. And we have stopped short of understanding who that is in our desire to be right and to do right and to stay in control and to not press and to not push, but just to be obedient and to not really look at anything farther than what somebody else said. I said in several episodes ago that in our past, many times people couldn't read. And so they had to rely on the people who could read in order to bring them truth. So they didn't study for themselves. They didn't look for themselves. They didn't have the opportunity to challenge what they were hearing. And then some of those who did challenge were met with an opposition that maybe later on we'll go into. They were called certain names that were detrimental to life. Okay. And so we missed being able to be enlightened truly to who God is, to who we are, and to the life that God has made available if we choose to receive it. That's where we're going to be going. Hopefully you'll stay with me. Hopefully you will grow. Hopefully you will not become offended because of the challenge to maybe some of the beliefs that you've held, or maybe what we're going to go into will answer questions that you've always had. How could a good God allow this to happen? So I hope that you'll stay with me. I hope that you will utilize a Diamond Journey journal in which I have defined some terms very on a very limited and very beginning basis, just to give you some understanding, because we've shortchanged ourselves, we've shortchanged our lives, we've shortchanged our health and our well-being, our spiritual growth, as well as our emotional stability. We have shortchanged ourselves because we were given limited information, and we never challenged the fact that even though we were experiencing things or hearing things, we didn't stop to ask ourselves why, because this doesn't make sense. So this is Dr. Anita, a longer episode than normal, a change in direction from where we've been, so that you can in real time utilize what you've learned, hopefully, about yourself, what you've been able to find out that was hindering you and stopping you from becoming all that you could be. Hopefully, you will have enough knowledge from your previous quote unquote religious understanding to be able to follow the breadcrumbs, to be able to complete the sentences that I make. When Jesus said, the things that I do, you'll do greater because I'm going to the Father. When we understand what was being said, a lot of things will make sense. When we understand who Jesus was, when we allow ourselves to move beyond what we were given and to question things like, where was Jesus in those years between 12 and 30? Where was he? When we look at things and we allow ourselves to be able to ask the questions of, that's odd that a person who was just standing in the crowd when Jesus was crucified would give him their tomb to be buried in. That's odd. He's really a nice guy. And as we move forward and we evaluate and we look at what other histories have said, when we look at what the Council of Nicaea did and the areas of scripture as they begin to go forward and evaluate, how is this working for us? What do we need to change? What do we need to modify? When we go back and look at those things, a lot will make sense to you. When we go back and look at when churches split from the universal church, when the Orthodox Oriental churches moved out, and why? What was the issue that they had with what was being placed in what we call scripture or the Bible today? What was their issue? Because when we put those things back together, we're able to find out what the problem was. When we go back and look at the names and the terminology that was given to us in scripture, when we look at the Hebrew, when we look at the Greek, when we look at those things, we're able to find out what was being hidden, what was actually being said, and we're able to see where we have been controlled. I hope you'll stay with me. I hope that you will let others know about this journey that we're going to be taking. Don't know how long we're going to be taking it. We'll take it until I feel led with my inner man to move on to something else. But definitely, hopefully, this will give you, from a spiritual perspective, what you need in order to heal yourself, in order to move past your own limitations, and in order to develop the diamonds of your life. Remember, always remember, becoming is a process, and that process has stages, and we're moving through those stages right now to get you to the point where life will make sense. You can rely on who you need to. You can connect to the rest of those who are spiritual, which we all are. and that you won't necessarily see everybody as other, but you will see them as you. Thank you for being with me. This is Dr. Anita. Please visit my website at www.DrAnitaMc.com. That's DrAnitaMc.com. Join me on FanBase as well as Wisdom. Thank you for being with me.